If you're an Australian looking to move to the US, there's probably two visas on your mind, the E-3 visa and the H-1B. And you're probably trying to decide which one you're going to go for. So I'm going to break down for you the pros and cons of each visa so that you can decide which one is best for you. Hi, I'm Mahalo, co-founder and CEO of Migrate Mate. We're an immigration company here in New York City that helps Australians get their E-3 visas for $499. I've personally been on 3 different E-3 visas, so I know the process inside and out. And being here in the States, running an immigration company, it's exposed me to a lot about the H-1B as well. We're even bringing one of our employees onto a H-1B as we speak. I've got a lot of personal experience here, and I want to run you through both visas. What most people don't know is that the E-3 visa is actually a derivative of the H-1B visa. They're both specialty occupation visas, which just means that they both require a bachelor's degree or equivalent. Think of jobs like software engineers, doctors, operations, HR, accounting, everything like that. Unlike the E-3, the H-1B is for anyone of any citizenship. However, the E-3 is only for Australian citizens. So if you're not Aussie, you do not qualify for an E-3 visa. Both the H-1B and E-3 visa have an annual cap. The H-1B annual cap is $85,000. $65,000 for anyone with a bachelor's degree and $20,000 for master's degrees only. The E-3, on the other hand, has a cap of $10,000. The major difference though between the two visas is which one actually hits their cap and which one doesn't. The H-1B every single year has been oversubscribed, whereas the E-3 has never reached its cap. Only about half of the available 10,000 E-3 visas are ever used each year, which means there's no lottery for the E-3 visa, but there is a lottery for a H-1B. Essentially, your odds of getting an E-3 are actually much higher than a H-1B. You'll see on screen the stats between the two. The H-1B lottery is conducted every March, which means that if you're not selected for it, you must wait until next year in order to go into the running to get a H-1B. The E-3 you can do it anytime throughout the year. The cost between the two visas varies significantly. The E-3 visa only costs a few $100s, and if you take into account Migrate Mate's $499 fee, it's only going to cost you about $814 altogether. But when you do a H-1B, the visa itself costs thousands of dollars, and you might need to get premium processing, and then you need to pay thousands more in lawyer fees. It's just a much more expensive visa than the E-3. Your employer also needs to brunt most of the costs of a H-1B, but for an E-3, it can be shared between the employer or the employee. It really doesn't matter. The other big difference between the visas is the time it takes to actually process them. An E-3 visa you can get in as little as a week, because that is how long it takes to certify your LCA, which is one of the forms that you need. And as soon as that's certified, you can go and do your interview if you manage to get a slot in time. Typically, an E-3 visa will take between 4 to 8 weeks to process for you to get your visa stamp in your passport and be able to come back to the US. The H-1B, on the other hand, is going to take months. First, you have the lottery in March, then you have the lottery results in April, and then you have to go file and get your H-1B processed, and it won't even kick in until October 1st that year. If you have a spouse who's looking to work in the US, then picking between the H-1B and E-3 is super important. If you're on a H-1B, then your spouse is eligible for a H-4 visa, which unfortunately has limited working rights if you don't have an approved I-140 immigrant petition, which means that your green card process is underway. Even if you do have an approved I-140 petition, your spouse will have to apply for an employment authorization document, or an EAD for short, which normally takes 6 to 12 months, which basically means that if your spouse wants to work right away, they're going to have to wait. If you're in an E-3, your spouse is eligible for an E-3D, and when they get to the US, that can be changed to an E-3S, which is the E-3 spousal visa, where they will be able to begin work in the US almost immediately, as long as that is their visa classification. If you're on a H-1B, the maximum length of time that you can stay in the US on your H-1B is 6 years, unless your green card application is underway, in which case you can get extensions. The E-3, on the other hand, is renewed every 2 years and has theoretically no maximum. Anecdotally, I know someone who's been on an E-3 visa for 18 years. Yes, 18 years. One big benefit of the H-1B is that it is a dual intent visa, which means that you can hold the H-1B and also pursue permanent residency in the US through a green card. This is a very common pathway to get a green card. However, the E-3 visa is very strictly a non-immigrant visa, which means you must not show intent to immigrate to the US. There's a couple of ways in which this manifests itself in real life. Either the consular officer, when you're doing your E-3 interview, will ask you, do you plan to return to Australia? And you will need to answer yes or no. And if you answer no, you may be denied your E-3 visa. Or secondly, have you filed an immigrant petition while being on your E-3? If you have, you will need to disclose that in your DS-160. And while this doesn't automatically disqualify you from getting another E-3 visa when you want to renew, it can create tension and demonstrate to an officer that you intend to immigrate, and may be a reason why they decide to refuse or deny your E-3 visa. Both the H-1B and E-3 are very portable visas. What this means is that you can change your job quite easily through them. With a H-1B, your new company would file an I-129, and as soon as the USCIS receives it, you are able to start working at your new company. With an E-3 visa, you have two options. You can either stay in the US and get an I-129 filed, just like the H-1B, or you can go back to Australia, go through consular processing, and get a new visa stamp. The advantage here is that you have a new visa stamp, which allows you to travel internationally and return back into the US on your E-3 status. However, if you do an I-129 extension, if you travel internationally, you may not be able to get back in on your E-3 because you do not have an updated visa stamp. Both the E-3 and H-1B have clear advantages and disadvantages compared to each other. What I've seen in my time is that the E-3 visa is better for people who are looking to move to the US ASAP, people who don't have the intention to get a green card anytime soon, and anyone who is able to fly back to Australia at least every 2 years. The H-1B, on the other hand, is best if you know that you're wanting to move onto a green card, or if you need to renew in slower increments such as 3 years. And a method that I've seen of how people get their visas are they will start with an E-3 visa, they will then enter the H-1B lottery every single year. If they are selected, then they'll move onto a H-1B, and then they'll eventually move onto a green card. I hope this has helped clarify exactly which visa is best for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to book a free consultation with me using the link below.